Hello, and welcome to the Designing with Love podcast. I am your host, Jackie Pellegrin, where my goal is to bring you information, tips, and tricks as an instructional designer. Hello, instructional designers and educators. Welcome to episode 68 of the Designing with Love podcast. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Sheldon Greaves, an author and educator, with me today. Welcome, Sheldon.
Hi, Jackie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm glad we got connected on PodMatch and had an opportunity to do this interview today. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to us getting into the deep dive of everything. So it'll be great. I'm looking forward to it. To start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and share what inspired you to focus on the education field?
Well, I have always been very passionate about learning, mostly, I guess it's trendy to blame your parents for a lot of things, and I guess I can do that in this case.
There you go.
My parents were both college graduates. My mother in particular, she graduated with a degree in English. She was a stay-at-home mom. But while she was in college, she also took a different language each of her 4 years. So she took German, French, Italian, and Latin. And so I grew up with someone who had a fairly wide view of the world. My father had traveled fairly extensively in Europe and the Middle East before he settled down. So there was a great deal of awareness that there's a big, beautiful world out there. My mother also was a huge fan of the public library, which served both as kind of a ersatz educator and occasional daycare, where she would drop me at the public library, and she also made a point of ensuring that there were lots of books in the house, and that's a habit that kind of stuck with me. I can't get enough of books. My wife is the same way. It's not entirely true that I married her for her library.
I love that.
And so I have always been kind of passionate about it. Going through school, I finally finished with a doctorate in Near Eastern Studies from UC Berkeley. And while I kind of soured on the whole academic scene, and there weren't any jobs anyway, but I still was very passionate about learning and education. And so I found other ways to exercise that passion, working in the nonprofit sector, in citizen science. And I also, by a very strange chain of events, found myself as a co-founder of Henley Putnam University, which was the first private university that was designed from the ground up to offer programs to the intelligence, counterterrorism, and executive protection industries. So I was basically training spies for a few years, which turned out to be just an incredible experience. And a real lesson in how the university system works. You know, you learn a lot about a university by building one.
Right, exactly. You learn the inner workings of it, that it's more than an educational system. It's a business. It has to operate.
Yeah.
Those inner workings of it. Yeah. And then you kind of see all the different elements that go into it, of the financial side of it, and then the government side of it, especially for undergraduate students, and Pell Grants and scholarships and loans, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And privacy and policies and all the stuff that you've got to come up with to make sure that you prove that you know how to run a university. Well, I also had to do my doctorate rather on a shoestring, because while I was doing my doctorate, my wife was doing hers at Stanford in classics. And so we were effectively a young married couple putting two kids through college, namely each other. And so we had to get creative. And one of the things we did, for example, was that after her scholarship ran out, I didn't get one because, she's smarter than I am. We would take turns. I would go to school and she would work full time, and then I would take a financial leave of absence, get a job. She would go to school, and we just trade off. And we eventually made it. I mean, we eventually did both finish, and we're still married. So I guess that says something about how that works. But when I wasn't in school formally, I still had to keep up with what I was doing, and I still had stuff I wanted to research. And that's where you kind of had to get creative, because I didn't always have access to the usual things that I would have had I been a student.
Right.
And that continued after I graduated, and I still wanted to do stuff, but didn't have access to a university. So that
cool.
formed the basis of my latest book, which is about how to do interesting and useful intellectual work when you don't have access to the tools of academia.
Wow, that's great. I love the story of you and your wife, how you both were able to work that out and really, really come to an agreement, right? And say, okay, you do it for this period, and then I'll take a break, and you figured out a way to make it work, and make it work in different ways so that you both probably wouldn't burn out, right? If you're both going at the same time and then trying to care for your family and your children and everything.
Yeah,
that would be a lot.
Wouldn't have worked. Well, we didn't have kids, but we did have cats. So
okay, well, that's and they have their own needs, right?
They have their needs, and they will let you know when you don't meet them. So.
Exactly, they can be they're independent, but they still need care, and
they need help. Yeah, they need care. So
absolutely, that's great. Well, I love that, and I love that your parents, had that, like your mom and your dad had that travel bug in them, and they love to explore and everything, because that sounds like my grandparents. They love to travel too, and they kind of put that in me. So I love learning. I don't know different languages, but I love to read too. So I have that affinity for reading books. So I would read mystery books when I was growing up. So I can relate to that. I would read Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys is what I would read when I was growing up in the summertime. So my friend and I would trade books, and she would read one and I would read one, and then we'd trade and we'd talk, read each other's, and then talk about it afterwards. So it was pretty.
So we had a book exchange.
Yeah, exactly. So I would collect the Nancy Drew. She would collect the Hardy Boys. So we each didn't have to buy books, and we saved on that. So it was fun.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was a neat idea. Definitely. So it's nice when you can be creative like that and do those things. That's great. Wow, I love that. That's a great way to open up, about what you were talking about with your book. So you talk about in your book about Guerrilla scholarship. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that? Maybe give us an example of that?
Yeah, that's Guerrilla scholarship is my designation, something I coined many years ago, that is basically doing intellectual work by using creative and unconventional approaches to finding and working with information. That's one half of it. It tends to ignore disciplinary boundaries, and it allows people to look at areas of study and inquiry that are often ignored by academics, not because academia is wrong or bad. It's simply they only get to look at what they can find funding for.
Right.
And that, creates kind of a small pocket where all the research gets done. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that just doesn't get touched. The other side of guerrilla scholarship is a deep appreciation and concern for doing so in a way that benefits the community. You form learning communities, you get people together, and you have salons and seminars and teach-ins, or just get a few people together at the coffee shop and you talk about stuff. And the idea is that like the guerrilla combatant, that kind of guerrilla can only succeed if they have the support of the surrounding community. And I think it's the same thing if you're doing, a kind of independent or semi-independent life of the mind.
Right.
And this is really kind of something that we need right now. I mean, from time to time, well, in numerous cases, the founding fathers repeatedly emphasized the importance of education in the citizenry, and I always turn to Dwight Eisenhower's farewell address. This is the one where he gave us the phrase military-industrial complex. That's what everybody remembers. But he also said that the industrial-military complex can only be held in check by, quote, an alert and knowledgeable citizenry.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why I'm kind of, well, a little exercised about this.
That's neat. Yeah, I like that. So we don't do it in isolation. We do it surrounded with other like-minded individuals or people that we may not know much about their area of expertise, and we can draw upon their experiences, and then we can learn from each other, right? So it's a community approach to being able to learn, right, and grow. Yeah, I like that. Right. I wonder if that's where social media kind of came from, was that need and that want to be able to form communities and from all around the world, right? And yeah, I like the local aspect though too, because being able to, like you said, go to your local coffee shop or do lunch and learn or something like that. We do that. There was a job I used to work at where we would do that. We would do lunch and learns, and we would bring together research and ideas and methods and things like that and talk about it, and then just do it over lunch. So that way we weren't, it was taking time away from their lunch hour, but we were like, bring your brown bag lunch and just come in, if you want to learn while you're at lunch, and instead of just sitting in the cafeteria or sitting in the break room, come in. And so it was nice.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example of how this can be done.
Hello, I have some exciting news to share with all of my listeners. There is a feature called Fan Mail. What this allows you to do is send me a text message anytime during the episode. There's a link located at the top of the description in each episode, and it says send Jackie a text message. So when you click on that link, you'll be able to send me a message letting me know what you thought about the episode and if you have any ideas for future episode content as well. I look forward to seeing your text messages. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. Do you have any examples of where you've seen it, that Guerrilla scholarship really effective in what you've been working on, maybe in the past or maybe what you're working on now?
Well, there's an example that I like to point to just as an example of being creative and unconventional. And this is the example of a 14-year-old eighth grader named Rebecca Freed, whose father would print off, I guess he worked at an office, a law office, and he would occasionally print off articles that he thought his kids would find interesting and bring them home. One of the articles that he printed was about a paper that had been published by a scholar by the name of Richard Jensen. And the paper claimed that the idea of in Irish immigration, that there were all these signs and ads that said no Irish need apply, that it was a myth, that this didn't really happen. Well, he brought this home, and Rebecca read the article, and she thought that seemed a little weird. So she jumped onto Google Images, and she started searching, and she immediately started finding these old period photographs of shop fronts with signs that said no Irish need apply. And this kind of piqued her interest, so she continued to dig, and eventually she got a hold of another gentleman by the name of Kirby Miller. He was a retired professor who specialized in immigration issues, and he happened to disagree with Jensen's thesis. And she went to him and she says, "Have I got something here?" And Miller goes, "Yeah, absolutely. You've got this is great stuff." So what he did was he helped her assemble what she had done and fill in the gaps and turn her little scattered body of research into a real rigorous paper, which was then submitted for peer review and published in the very journal that Jensen had published his original paper in. And it just completely knocked the pins out from under this guy's thesis.
Wow.
which I guess is not something, I mean, no scholar likes to have his thesis toppled, let alone by an eighth grader. But
Right.
But this is an example of how just being creative and letting your curiosity flow, but also hooking up with people who have the skills to take what you've done and show you how to turn it into real live scholarship. I mean, if she had just posted these things on social media, it wouldn't have made any difference at all.
Right. That's
But
true.
as it happens, she ended up making a significant contribution to the field of immigration studies.
Wow. That's amazing. And at 14 years old, she was able to take that. Yeah. And really, because I would imagine a 14-year-old wouldn't be able to probably have that, maybe not that capacity to be able to follow that through. Right. Because I know when I was that age, I didn't want to, there were things I wanted to do, but I didn't necessarily follow through with them because then something else would pique my interest and I would move on. Yeah. So that's hard.
Yeah. Well, when I was 14, I had no idea what peer review was. I had no idea what an academic journal was.
Right.
I mean, the most advanced thing that I would read would be like, of that sort would be, news magazines like, Time or Newsweek or that sort of stuff. I mean, I figured that was it, but
yeah, more
so,
the casual reading type of things that you could do on a Sunday morning or something. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. That's a great example. I love that. And so it shows that age and talent is no barrier because you can, like you said, hook up with someone that has that capability and that experience to be able to take it to the next level and bring it to maybe bring it to the finish line. If you've got something, it's not quite ready, you can have someone kind of help you with that. So
yeah. And, this also points up something else. And that is that there are an awful lot of people out there who used to be in academia. They're not anymore. Maybe they got disillusioned. Maybe they retired. Maybe they decided they wanted to do something else. But there's this huge, I believe, untapped reservoir out there of intellectual talent and expertise that I think in many cases is just kind of waiting or looking for an opportunity to do something with their stuff, or would love to dust something off and see what happens. And I'm kind of hoping that what this book will do is that it will inspire some of these people to kind of come out of the woodwork and see what they can do with what they've got, in 2025 or 2026.
That's great. Yeah, I've got your book on my list of books to get because I think that's, I think it's really great because, I mean, for a long time, I've thought about writing a book myself, but I thought that's just too far out there. And it's funny too, because I thought I couldn't teach college courses. I thought, nah, I'm not a teacher. And here I am 4 years into just, past that 4-year mark of teaching college courses. So I thought if I could do that, right, and so now the book is it's around 220 pages now. And so
wonderful.
Yeah. So in a week's time, it was about a week and a half. I was able to take all the different content from the podcast episodes, the solo ones that form the basis of the book. And so it was existing content that was already there. It was just putting it into a different format, adding, different things to it, to give them some reflection. And so it's a combination of academics. And then, so it's like that academic side of it, models, theories, but then also the practical application. So that way it's not, and there's so many great books out there that have some of that in there, but hopefully this will provide a unique lens from that, and people will be able to use it that are thinking of going into the field or want, to even just generally in education, if they're, not sure if they want to go into education. I think it's a great way to be able to do that, because these models and theories aren't just for instructional design. They're across different sectors within education, just in general, so hopefully it'll be a good resource. Yeah.
That sounds great. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, me too. And I even have a proposal that I put together and crafted that. So if I want to go with, like a hybrid publisher or something like that, then at least it's about 10 pages. So it's not too long. It's got a sample chapter and it's got
Nice.
some, the author biography in there and market research. I, did some research to see what does the industry look like and where's that at so that, publishers could see that it's a good return on investment because you know how that goes. You have to be able to pitch your book and it's a whole marketing plan that you have to show that you have that. And I was like, okay, I better show I have that social presence and
Yeah.
that ecosystem that I can build around it and market it. So, publishers will help you do that. But at the same time, the author needs to kind of do some of that legwork too. So, so that's important. That's great. Yeah. So as we know, there's been many changes in education over the last several years, probably even because of just AI, but, different other things have impacted that. How would you describe the state of education today, generally?
Well, that's a really interesting question because for the last couple of years, I've been working as a substitute and a personal care assistant and an educational assistant at the school district here in Albany, Oregon, and I've seen a lot of things, and I have all grades, K through 12, wherever they needed me, that's where they stuck me. Also, a lot with behavior support and special ed. I am in absolute awe of what school teachers do with what they have. It's just amazing to me. I feel like, quite honestly, the way teachers generally are regarded in this country is a national disgrace. I don't think they are paid nearly enough. Let's look frankly, until we start paying school teachers a six-figure salary, let's not even pretend that we're serious about education.
Right.
Schools, they are crowded. There was one guy that I was helping out. He was a kindergarten teacher. He had 32 kindergartners in his class, at least 2 or 3 of them with some fairly significant learning issues. And, I don't know how he managed to do it. But then we had a strike here locally. Teachers got most of what they wanted. And the next time I went to his class, it was half as big as what it was before, and things were under control.
Wow.
So, that kind of tells you a little bit about what's needed. I'm also of mixed opinion when it comes to the use of computers in class, especially these kindergartners. One of the things when I was helping out with this gentleman, when his class had 32 kids in it, they're all trying to get these kindergartners logged in on their iPads into the network. And, look, I'm sorry, asking 32 kindergartners to log into a network is like asking a starfish to do brain surgery.
Yes.
It's just not, it took 45 minutes just to get them all logged in. And it wasn't just the kids' problem. There were some of the computers were glitchy. Some of the software wasn't working right. And every time something like that happens, it adds another 5 minutes of delay.
Exactly. They're taking away from the actual learning process, right?
They really are.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of dubious about how computers are being used. I think there's a place for them, but I think it needs to be more carefully and more deliberately thought through.
Right. Especially at that young age. Yeah.
Definitely at that young age. Oh my gosh.
5 years old. I'm thinking back to when I was in kindergarten and we definitely didn't use computers. They were more concerned about getting us to learn shapes, numbers, colors, things like that, the basics. And instead of trying to navigate an iPad. Yeah, that's true. And I have a friend, her little boy is going to be 9 in January, but when he was 2, he had a tablet that I was like, 2? She would give him a tablet and now he loves it for everything. And I'm like, I don't know. I'd agree with you. I have my opinions on that too. I'm like, there has to be a balance somewhere and limits. And I don't know. It's just, that's kind of young to expose them to technology when they don't fully understand different things yet to understand the implications of technology and what it can do. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, funny story. When I was in first grade, I was having some trouble with math. This was in the early 60s, so that kind of dates me. But my parents went to talk to the teacher who was in charge of the math, teaching the math in our classroom, and they were concerned. And the teacher said, "Oh, don't worry. By the time he's an adult, everyone will have their own computer and it won't matter." Well, she was half right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
she was. Yeah. She had the first part right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just not the second part. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. And I wonder, what you mentioned about just the challenges of K through 12 education, if that's why so many students that I get in my classes are in K through 12 education. I would say 80% of them are getting the master's in instructional design because they want to come out of the classroom. And it's so sad to hear that they want to, that they're burned out, like you said, that they don't get enough pay and for what they do. I agree. And sometimes even in higher education too, I work as an adjunct faculty and I love what I do. And they say you don't go into education for the money, that's for sure. But I agree. There needs to be that compensation for what they're putting into it. And so, so it's tough. And I read some of the discussion questions and the things that they are going through and they face. And it's like, oh my goodness, they're still dealing with the effects of COVID, even almost 6 years later. And so it's had a lasting impact on learning and behavior and all those different aspects. So you've probably seen that too, and just the ripple effects of it. Yeah. So
it's very much so. Wow. The other thing too is that there is just so much cultural antipathy that's laid on teachers, which I find astonishing given that we have literal empirical proof that there are teachers out there who are literally willing to take a bullet for their kids. That's just heinous. It's unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's hope that, that we can improve education and make it so that, because it's, it's interesting because administrators and schools, they focus so much on test scores, right? And outcomes and everything else. And that's important. But if there isn't something, the research behind that to see why are test scores so low, because I read articles too, about the state of education, and then it's like, what's going on? Why is there such a disconnect? So it's very interesting. Yeah. Hopefully they can get test scores to go up, because then when you see other countries, like China and North Korea, and their students are so much higher in math and science, and it's like, oh, that's a little scary. We need to improve that and get them to a higher level so that they can be ready for college if that's what they want to do, or go to a trade school or something like that. So it's interesting. Wow. Yeah. So what kind of prompted you to develop your particular approach to learning in the life of the mind? Like when you wrote your book, or just in general?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of things. One was necessity, like I mentioned before, but there was another book that I encountered early in my doctoral program. It was written by Ronald Gross. It was called The Independent Scholar's Handbook, and it was first published in 1982. And he points out, well, he does a number of things. He also talked a lot about how to do scholarship in an independent way, but he also pointed out that many of the really interesting and groundbreaking work that had been done or was being done at the time was being done by people who were scholars but who were not part of academia. So an example, he gives several examples. One was Buckminster Fuller, the engineer who invented the geodesic dome and God knows how many other incredible inventions. He basically worked independently. It wasn't until much later in his life that he got any kind of professorship or anything. There was the historian Barbara Tuchman, who wrote some marvelous historical books. A Distant Mirror about the 13th century. I think it was one called Fire and Sword about Palestine, about the Zimmerman telegram, about the Guns of August, which was this classic study of how World War I broke out, which incidentally, John F. Kennedy had just finished reading about the time the Cuban Missile Crisis came about.
Oh, wow.
And this kind of influenced him. He understood from her book how easily certain things that are designed to prevent things from spinning out of control could actually have the opposite effect.
Wow.
In the book, she talks about how all these alliances were designed to keep wars from happening, but then at the end of the day, they actually caused it to happen. And so, another example was an American philosopher named Eric Hoffer, who wrote a book called The True Believer, which is still considered a standard work for anyone who's studying the nature of mass movements and political science. He was a dock worker in San Francisco.
Wow, that's
But
amazing.
he read very widely, and he came up with this amazing stuff. Well, in many cases, there's still a lot of truth to that. And I would kind of like to see more of that happen. I'd like to see more of it recognized and maybe kickstarted a little.
Right.
There's some very interesting things going on that a lot of people aren't aware of that I think are frankly kind of inspiring, if nothing else.
Right, exactly. And can help inspire the next, writer, the next researcher,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because we don't want certain industries to die away and to just go off into the distance. We still need all these different areas. So being able to have that, it's important.
And we need fresh ideas. We need places where people can kick around ideas that no one else is thinking about.
That's true. Yeah. And to come together and form those ideas. Yeah, that's important. Because we're meant to be in a community and not meant to be in isolation. So that's important. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So as we wrap up, what are your top tips or advice for listeners who are looking to transition into a field, whether it's in education or instructional design, or maybe they're just starting out in the field of education or instructional design in particular?
I would say a couple of things. One is to read widely about what's been going on in education, not just currently, but in its history. Find out how we got here. Now, I am by no means any kind of authority when it comes to instructional design. When I was working on Henley Putnam University, I was designing courses, but it was pretty much by the seat of my pants. And I was talking to people and saying, subject matter expert, please help me. And, I became intimately familiar with Bloom's taxonomy and stuff like that. But much of what I learned, I kind of learned the hard way. The other thing I would do is talk to teachers who are actually on the line, on the firing line, as it were. Ask them what works. Ask them what works. Ask them what they love. Ask them what they hate, and shape what you're doing accordingly. Because I'm afraid that so much of the material that I see looks kind of like it was designed in isolation from the classroom. Not all of it, but enough of it to kind of make me wince a little.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. So, that's, for what it's worth, that's about, that's the best I can give you at this point.
I love that. Yeah. And having that novice approach to the subject, because for me, my experience is in business and then education in the sense of the instructional design and e-learning, things like that. But I work on programs and courses in counseling, social work, psychology. I have a little bit of that psychology background because of the business and the marketing, because we learn about the psychology behind why people make decisions the way they do and buyer behavior, things like that. So I have a little bit of that psychology background, but not to the extent that these people do, that are subject matter experts and our faculty. So I love that you brought that up, that don't create that content in isolation and collaborate with people and find out, like you said, once you implement it, go back to it and evaluate it and see what's working, whether it's formative or summative evaluation, and see what's effective, what's not. Do we need to make adjustments? Because refinement is always important to do. It's
it's an ongoing process.
Right.
A curriculum is a living thing.
Right. Absolutely. So true. Yeah. So I always like to take that novice approach and not feel like I know so much about the content that I lose that curiosity and that sense of asking questions. Because then if I think I know the answer, I'm not going to ask the question. Right. So being able to have that sense of always wanting to learn more, even though I may know some of the terminology, I don't know it to the depth that they do, because they're in the field, they're working and they're teaching it every day. And so it's it would be like someone trying to teach my class on instructional design, and not everybody can do that. So we all have our talents and our skills that we're able to bring to the table. So it's really great to have that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And being able to recognize that we all work together. So it's a team effort.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is a communal effort. No doubt about it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Because like, for example, I utilize AI to help draft some first, general ideas for the faculty and the subject matter experts, just to give them something to start with, so that they're not looking at a blank piece of paper or a blank screen and trying to come up with the ideas on their own. And so what I do is I survey them and I find out what are some of the knowledge and skills that future graduates of this program need to have. And then I take that and I put that raw data into our closed system AI tool, and I'll ask it, can you come up with some of the key themes and key information from that? And it'll give me a document. And then I present that in the kickoff meeting and I say, based on the raw data, which you can view and I can show you that, but here's a high level overview of that. So that way I'm not overwhelming them with a bunch of raw data, because a lot of them don't like that. They just want to know what's the gist of it. And then from there, we just kind of move along, and and I utilize that to inform different aspects of it and to make sure we're on track. And so it's really neat. So we had a meeting today and we went over the domains and competencies, finalized those, and we worked those out. And all the drafts were based on AI. And so I said, it's only going to be as good as what I ask it to do and what my knowledge is. But you guys are the experts. You know what's needed and what is going to work for the students. So we tweaked all, some of the things, we rearranged things, and I'm like, that's what this is all about. This is what true collaboration is about. And I need your expertise. Yeah. So it's a great experience when you can take that and you can utilize everyone's knowledge and skills and their expertise and really make it the best curriculum it can be for the students. I always like to imagine them as with their graduation cap on. And so that was something my coworker did. He drew it on the board and he's like, we're here. Let's imagine them as a graduate. So it's always that nice picture of being able to imagine them walking down that aisle and getting their cap and gown, Yeah. So, yeah.
It's a great feeling.
Yeah,
really
absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Well, I enjoyed this conversation. This was wonderful, Sheldon. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. Your experiences, tips, and expertise are sure to inspire my listeners. So I appreciate
thank you,
that.
Jackie. It was a pleasure.
Great. Thank you. I look forward to having you back again on the show, because whenever I have someone on my show, it seems like we want to do another episode and continue the conversation. So I welcome that opportunity again.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking some time to listen to this podcast episode today. Your support means the world to me. If you'd like to help keep the podcast going, you can share it with a friend or colleague, leave a heartfelt review, or offer a monetary contribution. Every act of support, big or small, makes a difference, and I'm truly thankful for you.